This was a bold move, a real gamble. Just imagine it. China, a country with more than a few bumps in its agricultural road, decides to take a radical step. They released millions of crayfish onto their rice paddies and farmlands. Not just a handful, but an entire army of scuttling crustaceans. It sounds like something out of a survival manual, a desperate measure for desperate times. But the people behind this weren't just shooting in the dark. They were searching for a breakthrough, a way to shake up a system that kept breaking down. The old methods weren't working anymore. They needed something wild, something powerful. Why crayfish, you ask? These little guys are famous for two things: digging and eating. A lot of eating. The idea was simple. What if those natural instincts could be put to good use? Could these freshwater critters become allies in the fight against pests? Their constant burrowing could actually help the soil. That was the theory, a pretty wild one, but backed by observation. Scientists and agronomists looked at the problems: depleted soil, rampant pests, a heavy reliance on harsh chemicals, and they saw a possible natural solution. It was a leap of faith, a bet that Mother Nature's own engineers could do the heavy lifting. The operation itself was something else. Picture trucks loaded with live crayfish rolling up to farms. Then the release, a flood of claws and shells pouring onto waterlogged fields, ready to explore new territory. This wasn't some quiet little test in the back 40. No, they went all in, full-scale deployment across vast agricultural regions. Farmers who'd worked this land for generations using traditional, often backbreaking methods, watched with a mix of disbelief and cautious hope. This was uncharted territory for everyone involved, a massive ecological experiment playing out right before their eyes. Of course, there were fears. Big ones. What if the crayfish found the crops tastier than the pests? What if they multiplied too fast and became a new problem themselves? There were a lot of what-ifs, and all of them were serious. Experts debated the potential downsides. Could they avoid disrupting local ecosystems? Could crayfish carry diseases? Every step was monitored. The pressure was immense. This audacious plan had to work, not just for the harvest, but for trust in large-scale natural solutions. Failure wasn't an option. Before the crayfish showed up, life on many Chinese farms was, to put it mildly, no picnic. Farmers were locked in an endless war with pests. These weren't just minor nuisances. They were crop-destroying machines, capable of wiping out an entire season's work. To fight back, farmers often turned to tons of chemicals. They sprayed and sprayed. But the pests would develop resistance, demanding even stronger and more frequent treatments. This chemical war was expensive, not just in cash, but in environmental and personal health costs for the farmers themselves. It was a grueling, seemingly endless battle against nature's invaders. The financial situation for many rural farmers was shaky at best. A house of cards. The high cost of fertilizers and pesticides ate up most of their earnings. Yields, despite all the chemicals, often stagnated or even dropped as the soil wore out. Making a decent living from the land was getting harder and harder. This financial squeeze pushed many young people to leave the countryside in search of better opportunities in China's booming cities. Rural life was at risk of fading away, losing its traditions, growing weaker. The government understood that sustainable agriculture wasn't just an environmental issue, it was a vital social and economic one. Beyond the farm gates, the environmental damage was snowballing. All those chemicals didn't stay in the fields. Runoff carried pesticides and excess fertilizers into rivers and lakes, contaminating water sources. This had devastating effects on aquatic life and possibly on people's health. The soil itself suffered. It became compacted, lost fertility, and couldn't hold water as well. The delicate balance of local ecosystems was seriously disrupted. Beneficial insects, birds, and other wildlife disappeared as their habitats turned toxic. It was a clear sign that something was fundamentally wrong with the way farming was done. This backdrop of struggle and environmental anxiety drove the desperate search for alternatives. China's agricultural strategists realized that the intensive, chemical-dependent farming model just wasn't sustainable in the long run. They needed solutions that could restore ecological balance, improve farmers' lives, and ensure food security for a massive population. This urgency opened the door to innovative, even unorthodox ideas. The stage was set for something completely different. The land was crying out for a new approach, and the crayfish experiment became one of the boldest answers to that call. Once the crayfish were released, things started to change. Slowly at first, then faster and faster, like a snowball rolling downhill. The first thing they tackled was the pests. These crustaceans turned out to be voracious predators for many of the usual farm troublemakers. They gobbled up snails that would otherwise devour young rice shoots. They feasted on insect larvae hiding in the mud. This was natural pest control in action, a living shield for the crops. Farmers began to notice that there were a lot fewer pests, which meant they needed fewer chemicals. The crayfish became tiny armoured allies in the fields. Their digging, which some had worried about, turned out to be incredibly good for the soil. By burrowing, crayfish loosened up compacted earth. This made it easier for water to reach plant roots. Drainage improved too, preventing the rice paddies from getting waterlogged. The constant churning of the soil by these mini excavators mixed in organic matter, naturally boosting fertility. It was like having millions of tiny cultivators working day and night, improving the very foundation of farming. The fields could breathe again. The economic impact for farmers was huge. First off, they saved a ton of money on pricey pesticides, and in some cases fertilizers too. That immediately boosted their profits. But then came an even bigger bonus. The crayfish themselves became a valuable secondary crop. There's massive demand for crayfish in China. And farmers discovered they could harvest and sell these crustaceans for good money. Suddenly their fields were pulling double duty: rice and crayfish. This kind of diversification gave them a much-needed economic safety net and a path to greater prosperity. The broader environmental impact was impressive too. With less chemical runoff, water quality in local streams and rivers began to improve. This, in turn, benefited aquatic life downstream. In a healthier, less toxic environment, other wildlife started returning to the fields. Frogs, birds, and beneficial insects began to come back, signalling the ecosystem was bouncing back. The crayfish weren't just helping the crops, they were helping restore a more natural balance to the agricultural landscape. It was a powerful demonstration of how working with nature, not against it, can pay off in so many ways. The farmers' reaction was overwhelming. The initial skepticism, which is only natural when you try something this radical, quickly gave way to enthusiastic acceptance. They saw the results with their own eyes: healthier crops, fewer pests, and most importantly, more money in their pockets. There was less work spraying chemicals, and thanks to the crayfish, more income. For many, this experiment didn't just change how they farmed, it changed their lives, offering a more stable and profitable future on their home soil. Their approval became the best proof of success. Environmentalists and economists, who often see things from very different perspectives, surprisingly found common ground in praising this initiative. Environmentalists were thrilled by the obvious ecological benefits: less pollution, healthier soil, and greater biodiversity. It was a win for sustainable agriculture. Economists, meanwhile, pointed to the increased profitability for farmers, the creation of new rural businesses processing and selling crayfish, and the overall boost to the local economy. This wasn't just about growing food, it was about building strong rural communities. The numbers backed up these success stories. The positive effects rippled outward, revitalising entire rural regions. New small businesses popped up, local restaurants specialising in crayfish dishes, small processing plants, and even tourism projects where people could visit crayfish farms. This created new jobs, giving a chance to those who might otherwise have left for the city. These areas found a new sense of energy and optimism. Crayfish became more than just a commodity. They became a symbol of renewal and innovation, proof that rural life really could be prosperous and dynamic. So what's the big lesson from this Chinese crayfish adventure? It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most effective solutions are right in front of us. You just have to look to nature itself. It took courage, a willingness to experiment on a massive scale, and a break from conventional thinking. This unique Chinese experience shows that ecological farming can be both economically rewarding and highly productive. Could this model be repeated elsewhere? Maybe not exactly, since every environment is unique, but the core principle, using natural processes and biodiversity to benefit agriculture, has universal potential. This is a story of survival, adaptation, and finding those clever ways to thrive.